Thomas had a deep love for children. In fact, he said they were closest to his heart. That's a direct quote. He had a love for all the children. And in his beautifully compassionate dedication in the great work, as those of you who noticed might remember, he said the following: to the children, to all the children, to the children who swim beneath the waves of the sea, to those who live in the soils of the earth, to the children of the flowers in the meadows, in the trees, in the forests, to all those children who roam over the land, and the winged ones who fly with the winds, to the human children too, that all may go together into the future. That is such an extraordinary dedication. As you see baby birds and baby worms and baby fish and all of the children. One winter afternoon, I went to see Thomas at his hermitage in Greensboro, which was a small apartment over a former stable. It's been mentioned. I wanted to talk to him about the work going on for children and teachers at our Center for Education, Imagination, and the Natural World at Timberlake. He had given us guidance at every juncture, and I wanted to give him an update on our progress. I had had the joy of being with those who had not lost their spiritual vision and who participated freely in a communion of subjects with trees, plants, animals, and all living things of the earth. These visitors of whom I'm speaking at our earth sanctuary, who kept giving us courage to keep on, were between the ages of 3 and 8 years old. At our center, we watch for those special magical moments that bring children into a direct personal connection with the natural world. And I had some of those to share with Thomas that day. He settled himself into his favorite chair to listen with full presence as I told him about these things. I told him about a small group of 7-year-olds suddenly stopping on their trail walk one windy fall day to carefully observe a tiny spider web tossing back and forth, and then watching for minutes in silent amazement at the miraculous movements of the spider to repair it. 3 5-year-olds sitting in rapt attention, watching the movement of tiny golden frogs at the creek on the creeping cedar trail, which remember Thomas loved. A group of 7 to 10-year-olds at our summer dance camp, thoughtfully absorbing shapes and rhythms of the earth, and then creating dance and movement patterns in collaboration with one another among the trees. An incredible moment of intimacy on Timberlake Trail between a gray fox and a group of 8-year-olds with teachers and parents, when in absolute silence, there was an encounter of deep communion. I have to tell you more about that moment. I was so fortunate to be in on that moment. We were at the head of a trail, and these were 2nd graders. And I had just said to the children, if we do see a wild animal, this is the thought that you want to think. The same spirit that abides in you abides in me. And no sooner had I said that than maybe 12 feet away, there was a full-grown gray fox. Now, you know, we have red fox in the area, but a gray fox is a real sighting. We all stayed in complete silence. The fox and all of us, the children and the parents and the teachers. And there was this extraordinary exchange. There was this extraordinary enhancing relationship. And it was a long one for us to really absorb that moment And then the fox turned tail and walked into the woods. And that was years ago. And I still hear occasionally from a parent or a teacher who was there that day. It was quite startling. Then there were 4-year-olds who counted sun sparkles on the lake. And then they danced at the lakeside with their earth guide. Then there was a 6-year-old girl who, when asked to listen deeply to the sounds of the woods, said this, "I even heard the beat of my own heart." And there was another little boy, when we asked the children, we asked them to listen inwardly first and not outwardly at all. And then we asked them to listen outwardly and not inwardly at all. And at the end of one of those practices, one little boy said, "I heard ancient fires crackling." Another little girl, in the listening outwardly, said, "I heard 10 caterpillars yawning." That was the level. And as I was telling Thomas these things, I was remembering one other story that I really love. I was having dinner one night at a restaurant with a friend of mine, and a couple came by the table where I was sitting with my friend with their twins. And the little boy, Dennis was his name, he was about 5 then, and his R's hadn't come in yet. You know how that is. And he stopped when he saw me and he said, "Calvin," he said, "Hi." And I said, "Hi, Dennis." And he said, "You know, I love the earth." And I said, I know you do, Dennis. I know you do. He'd been to our summer camp as well as other programs. And he said, "You know what?" And I knew something was coming, in that way that you can feel that a truth coming. And if you're really lucky, you can hear it. And he said, "The heart of the earth never stops beating." Well, I said, "Could you say that again, Dennis?" And he was glad to oblige, this little sage in front of me. He said, "The heart of the earth never stops beating." So as I told Thomas these things, he smiled in deep delight and then began to speak very seriously as I took careful notes. The child is growing up today in a geobiological moment that has never happened in 65 million years. The life of the child, he went on with great eloquence, has always been organized around a real abiding world of beauty, wonder, and the intimacy of living processes. Wind, frogs, butterflies, not a manufactured electronic world of virtual reality. The child has a natural bond of intimacy with the natural world, a remarkable sense of identification with all living things. Children need the personal connection with the natural world first in their early years, for the natural world activates the spirit in their minds, what they see in the water, the rocks, the movement of insects. Thomas, I remember saying to him, "We're finding that children seem to know about global warming and climate change, but they don't often know the sound of a bullfrog or the smell of spring rain." He responded by saying this, "Children need to develop within a whole cosmology of the sun, moon, stars. They need to experience mystical moments of dawn and sunset. They need to awaken to a world to relate to as a communion of subjects, not to use as a collection of objects."